Australia doesn't have a housing strategy, it has a self-sabotage strategy. At the very moment the country needs more homes, faster approvals and lower building costs, governments are doing the opposite, fighting amongst themselves over land prices, piling fresh compliance costs onto builders, changing the rules mid-crisis and trapping projects in approval purgatory for longer than it takes to actually build the house. Now, in one case, 1,500 Western Sydney homes were scrapped because one arm of government could not agree with another arm of government on what taxpayer-owned land was actually worth. In another instance, a council took 450 days to approve a house that took just 200 days to build. Now that tells you everything you need to know about the real problem. It's not demand and it's not just supply. It's the government standing in the middle of the road congratulating itself while traffic backs up for miles. Let's start with New South Wales, where the farce is almost too absurd to parody. Landcom, which is the state government's own public developer, walked away from plans for the Western Sydney suburbs of Tallawong, Rooty Hill and Austral after years and years of work. Why? Not because the land was unavailable, not because the sites were unsuitable, and not because builders could not build. The projects fell into a hole because Landcom and another New South Wales government agency, the Office of Strategic Lands, could not agree on the price of the land that was already owned by the state government. The government blocked itself from delivering desperately needed homes because the government could not cut a deal with the government. You could not invent a better symbol of bureaucratic failure if you tried. These were not fantasy numbers in some consultant's deck. The Rooty Hill site was expected to deliver between 300 and 500 homes. Tallawong was flagged for diverse housing across 29 hectares. That was hundreds and hundreds of homes lost. Austral had already seen plans lodged for more than 70 homes. This was real capacity, real land and real need. Yet instead of bulldozers and tradies, we got negotiations, valuations, strategic considerations, and in the end, a shrug. That is the modern housing crisis in one frame. Governments promising supply with one hand while strangling it with the other. The deeper problem is not one failed negotiation. It's a culture. We now have a system where public agencies behave like rival empires, not parts of a coordinated housing solution. Each department protects its turf. Every process becomes its own religion. Every decision gets filtered through layers of caution, valuation, review, and political optics. The result is paralysis dressed up as governance. Meanwhile, ordinary Australians are told that housing is complex, as though the crisis arrived by weather pattern, rather than being manufactured by years of bureaucratic obstruction. Now, Victoria offers a different version of the same disease. There, the issue is not one government agency fighting another over land value. It's the state loading more cost and more compliance onto an industry which is already on its knees. The Victorian state government's building and plumbing enforcement reforms have been blasted by industry groups who warn the changes could add up to 30% to the cost of building a new home. Now think about that for a second. At a time when affordability is already broken, when builder confidence is shot, when new home construction is at a decade low, the answer from government is more paperwork, more reporting, more cost, and less capacity. Now that's not reform, it's economic vandalism. And the people warning about this are not fringe voices. The Housing Industry Association says the bill lands at the worst possible time. Master Builders Victoria says it will significantly drive up construction costs, slow housing delivery, and hit small to medium-sized builders particularly hard. These are the businesses that actually build the homes that politicians keep promising at press conferences. They don't have limitless balance sheets. They cannot absorb endless new compliance burdens. While material costs rise, margins get crushed, and fixed price contracts become financial traps. Every extra impost gets pushed somewhere, onto house prices, into rents, into delays, or into builders leaving the market altogether, usually all four of those. Now the ACT is replaying the same script under a green tinted banner of technical process. New National Construction Code changes are being adopted there while builders warn they could add between $14,000 and $55,000 to the cost of a new build. Again, note the timing. This is happening during a housing crisis in a high-cost environment with households already smashed by higher interest rates, stubborn inflation, and elevated construction costs. And still, the instinct from government is to add more requirements. Always more requirements. Never fewer barriers. Never a serious attempt to strip the system back to what is essential to get homes built. Of course, the defenders of these changes will say that standards matter, and fine, standards do matter, but so does reality. A housing code that prices people out of housing is not a triumph of enlightened policy. It's a policy failure with a moral halo painted on the top. There is always a new justification, always a new worthy objective, always another layer of technical perfection to chase. But every new rule has a cost. And in housing, those costs compound brutally. It's death by 1,000 noble intentions. Tasmania and South Australia have refused to implement the same changes for exactly that reason. They understand that when the market is already under extreme strain, government should stop making it worse. But that message is lost on the ACT government, one of the worst in the country. Then we get to local government, where the machine slows from dysfunctional to ridiculous. In Albury in southern New South Wales, a development application took 450 days to approve for a house that took roughly 200 days to build. That's the entire crisis in miniature. We have a system where approving a home takes more than twice as long as actually constructing it. Nobody can seriously argue that this is a supply problem disconnected from bureaucracy. This is bureaucracy. And this is the supply problem. Every month that a project sits waiting for approval, holding costs rise, uncertainty rises, financing gets tighter, and fewer projects stack up. Add red, green and white tape, as the HIA puts it, and you create a planning culture where builders spend as much time feeding the system as they do building homes. This is why the standard political line about unlocking supply rings so hollow. Supply is not unlocked by political speeches. It's unlocked by removing the blockages. Stop government agencies hoarding or haggling over land that should already be in the pipeline. Stop introducing legislation that hikes building costs when affordability is already in freefall. Stop imposing the changes that sound good in theory but make projects unviable in practice. And stop forcing builders to spend 450 days waiting for a stamp. The villain in this story is not mysterious. It's policy, it's process, it's institutional self-importance masquerading as public service. And the sting in all of this is that every delay, every extra cost, every new layer of bureaucracy gets paid for by the same people: aspiring homeowners, renters, and small builders. Not by the departments, not by the cabinet ministers, not by the committees that design the obstacles. The bill lands on families trying to get into the market, on renters copping higher weekly payments because supply is throttled, and on builders being asked to carry the risk of a system that governments keep making heavier, slower, and costlier. Australia's housing crisis is no longer just a market failure, it's a governance failure. Governments say they want more homes. Their actions say they want more process. And process, unfortunately, is winning. Until that changes, the housing shortage will not be solved. It will be administered. And housing will keep getting more and more costly to supply.